Ciao everyone, this is Nate on the Stone. Welcome back to my channel, and as promised I am here this time around to talk about the high watermark of this year's Politicon, which was held in Los Angeles. Now if you haven't seen my last video, where I talked about my initial thoughts and reactions to this, my very first Politicon, then just click the I right there in the top right corner and watch that video before going any farther. I should probably just have to say, Ben Shapiro gave the keynote address at Politicon, and you should respond with high watermark of the weekend. This could be just because Ben Shapiro is one of the brightest lights on the political sea at this time, either on the left or the right. He's an intellectual dynamo who has a vast breadth and depth of knowledge and facts on a wide variety of topics, and more importantly than that, he's able to weave those facts and that knowledge into concise and understandable arguments. I probably don't have to give examples of that because chances are you've either heard him speak personally or have watched clips of his speeches and have seen that firsthand. Now, this doesn't mean that everyone on the right agrees with Shapiro. This doesn't mean that I agree with Shapiro 100% of the time, but it does mean that he's an intellectual heavyweight who has proved his mettle, and his ideas do deserve to be grappled with. This would probably be enough to assure that his speech was the acme of Politicon, but during his speech, he went the extra mile. He made a point that was spot on.
We talk about rights all the time, and that's good, because we should talk about rights and how to defend them. But because we very rarely talk about the virtues that are necessary to preserve freedom and preserve a free people, we end up generating a backlash to the right itself. So for example, the right is very pro-capitalism. Right? All of that is great. I'm a virulently free market individual. But in order for free markets to actually operate the way they are supposed to, you require a virtuous and decent people. You require people who are going to abide by certain basic social rules. You require people who have enough respect for each other that they're not trying to cheat each other at every turn, who have enough respect for each other in the social fabric, they're not trying to tear each other apart in the name of short-term gain. You need a virtuous people. And so it's incumbent on all of us to become more virtuous in how we speak. And that's me too, right? I've failed at this. We all fail at this. But the question is, which direction are we moving? Can we make ourselves more virtuous? Can we have conversations with other people without assuming the worst motives and the worst intent? If we make ourselves better, then we deserve our rights. We have those rights, whether we deserve them or not. And the solution to misuse of rights is not to quash the right. But if we actually wish to be a free people who preserve our own rights, then we have to be a more virtuous people.
Virtue is necessary for freedom. Oh, be still my beating heart. Now, in all seriousness, what was so great about his brief discussion about virtue being necessary for freedom? Well, in the first place, it's because it's true. If you read the American founders for really any length of time, you're going to find out pretty quickly that the theme of virtue being necessary for freedom was a common one among them. That's why John Adams said our Constitution is suitable only for a moral and religious people. It's why Benjamin Franklin said only a virtuous people are capable of freedom. It's why George Washington said of all the habits and dispositions which are necessary for political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports. Of course, just because the founders said it doesn't make it necessarily true. They could have been wrong, of course. But there is a reasonable and logical argument to be made for what they and Shapiro argue. Virtue, at the end of the day, means doing what we should do instead of just what we want to do. So honesty, being truthful, even when that means we're not going to get ahead and might even be punished. Courage, standing up for someone or something when it would be easier just to walk away. Prudence, actually thinking through a situation instead of barging in face first, guns blazing. Temperance, telling ourselves no to whatever it is that we really want, whether it's another slice of pie or whether it's the newest video game that we don't have the money for to buy right at that moment. If we the people aren't virtuous, but slip and then fall into vices, then our freedom becomes what the American founders called license, which is corrupted freedom. And corrupted freedom can't survive. Let's take an example. Let's take the right to bear arms. Now, self-defense is a natural right, meaning that we are born with that right because our lives are inherently valuable in and of themselves. The American Constitution recognizes that natural right in the Second Amendment, which says that the right of the people to bear arms shall not be infringed. That's fine and dandy, but that right, that expression of freedom, also comes with a corresponding duty. If we exercise that right, that freedom to bear, to own a gun, or any weapon for that matter, we have the duty to be responsible for that weapon, learning how it works, maintaining it, making sure that it works properly, making sure that it is kept away from people who shouldn't have it, like criminals, or people who can't have it, like children. Taking time to do all those things requires virtues like patience, industriousness. I'd even say attention to detail. Now, if in some parallel universe, the vast majority of gun owners all across the United States woke up and in unison said, screw it, we're not going to do that anymore, and started treating their guns irresponsibly, lives would be put in danger. And if no one actually tried to alleviate that danger, then some outside force would have to step in to preserve those lives. And we all know what that would be. The government would step in to preserve those lives, more likely than not by vastly curtailing the right to bear arms. In other words, because of their laziness and because of their indifference, i.e., because of their vices, the people would have lost the right to own a gun. They would have lost their freedom because their freedom had been corrupted. And this holds true for every right, for every expression of freedom, for freedom itself. People who tell lies instead of telling the truth, people who can't control their appetites, people who can't control their emotions and form mobs or send crude pipe bombs in the mail. They can't be trusted with freedom, and so their freedom has to be taken away. They don't even have freedom anymore because their freedom has been corrupted by their vices into license, which is something completely different than actual freedom. And secondly, why was this a big deal? Because for as important a point as it is, it really doesn't get the attention and respect it deserves. Outside of Shapiro's keynote speech, I can think of maybe, a handful of other times where I have either heard or read people making that argument that virtue is required for freedom to exist and to thrive. So the fact that Ben Shapiro made that point during his keynote speech at Politicon, yeah, I was bouncing off the walls and tap dancing on air for the rest of the day. So yeah, for me, that was the highlight of Politicon. I had a blast, and I am looking forward to going again next year as well. But as always, what say you? Is virtue necessary for freedom to survive? Or is virtue just a fancy way of limiting real freedom? As always, I am curious to know what you all think down in the comments below. Well, that's about all for right now, gang. Remember that if you liked this video, whether you agree with me or not, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and ring that bell for notifications. I post new videos like this every Tuesday, and you won't want to miss them. As always, thanks again for watching, and I will see you all again here next week on Top of the Stone. Ciao.